such a big thing. Joining us in studio is Ratna Joshi, former marketing at HarperCollins and Penguin. So Ratna, clearly there is a huge push now to grab the eyeballs of the young readers.
Yeah, that overall is supposed to be our future, anyone's future. We have seen serious readers so far, but we obviously have to engage our young adults and children from a very small age to see that they, other than getting a grooming from their parents, they also have a mental development. Now, reading is really, really important to do that. Other than serious reading, these are the ones which are really encouraging them to go ahead and learn something new in life.
So what's standing out from these books? Because clearly it's a retelling. There are new narratives, new perspectives, but the style, is it somewhat of a Chetan Bhagatization of Indian mythology?
Yes, it is. Chetan actually was the one who really got the young readers engaged in reading.
Right.
And he's really changed the whole trend of from moving the interest, shifting in from serious literary fictions to mass market and now all this. So the kids, other than reading a 300-pager which is really serious, are more interested in something which is much pacier, even if it's like 400 pages. So these thick, big novels, series, multiple volumes, it still engages them much more than a serious literary novel would.
So apart from the narrative and the style, I mean, you've been in marketing departments of big publishing houses. Give us a sense of how much goes behind making sure these books are picked up from the shelves by these young readers.
Well, the whole interest is divided in a way that the interest where they are, social media, virals, YouTubes, everything has to be involved in a way that wherever they go, they find the book there. So the whole force of marketing is to get the right kind of publicity material ready for them, other than just the regular newspaper reviews, which doesn't really appeal to them.
And so you engaged actually, because before we began the conversation, you were saying that you engaged with the whole Ashok Banker phenomenon. You know, he was one of the first few in the early 2000s that really kick-started the phenomenon.
Yeah, so Ashok's Ayodhya series came out in about, I think, 2003 end or somewhere. And he was the one who got himself published by an international publisher then when the Indian publishers came in. So he, with a series of 8 books, which was fiction, mythology, Indian mythology, engaging the right readers, young readers. So he really started that trend, and then many more came in. We saw many more similar writing came in after that. He also self-published Mahabharata. He then came on to Krishna. And now we've got Amish Tripathi doing the wonders.
And give us a sense also, you know, from a publishing perspective, how do you go about publicizing these books? Because after all, India is such a rich oral tradition of these stories that are told in different households and in different parts of the country differently. How do you bring everyone to generate interest around the books that have been written in a new form, a new manner?
See, pre-publicity is something which is now looked after, then a book hitting the shelf and then publicizing it. The hype is created much, much in advance, literally sometimes even a year in advance, when we have a big contract signing in, which creates a buzz and people get interested in waiting on for a whole lot year for the book to come in. Pre-publicity happens in stores, pre-orders are created, publicity material is created, interesting virals are created which are floated around. Social media, the authors themselves are engaging so much into it now. Sometimes they also have their own personal team sitting there for them 24 hours doing all this for them.
So interesting. So we actually do have an author joining us via Skype from Bangalore, Maitri Chaudhary, who's written 2 books, Reflections on My India and Wherever the Present is Ancient Benares. Maitri, you know, the question that we're asking is, how is it that the mythological narrative has become so popular again? Because after all, mythology has been in the past an oral tradition. How are authors like you making it a little more accessible for today's readers?
Well, I don't know if I'm really making it accessible to today's readers, because my genre is slightly different from the kind that Amish Tripathi writes.
Right.
I am more of a non-fiction writer.
Sure.
I'm more into poetry. My book which caters to mysticism in Benares is a book of poetry, and the first book Reflections on My India is a book of essays. So I would say that the recent trend of this mythology coming to the fore is all about better packaging, and packaging it in a way that generation now can relate to it.
Yeah.
You know, if you put in Sanskrit words, maybe generation now can't really relate to it. But if you have books like the ones Amish Tripathi is writing, it's a way of bringing mythology into the very this generation kind of medium where they can relate to the kind of words that he is writing. Not only, of course, Amish Tripathi, amongst others also. That they can really relate to what is going on, and because they have also heard probably from the previous generations about the epics, but maybe because of the language or the way it was portrayed, they couldn't really relate to it. But now, with these kind of books coming in, I think this generation can really relate to it more. I use poetry and some of my columns to write about mythology in a very lucid fashion, which is very understandable, and in a very day-to-day manner of speaking.
All
So
right.
that it's not something that is, relegated to the scriptures.
Right.
Something to bring down to the streets or bring down to the everyday level.
All
That's
right.
how I write my mythology.
All right, and that's a very interesting perspective because Ratna, it is now about making it accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The whole, I mean, from the publisher view also, I would still say when an editor and a publicist and a author sit together, they always sit and discuss how it can be reached to the vast and not just restrict. I mean, and the whole thing is about language, which restricts another reader to come in and grab the book. So language definitely plays a really, really important role. It has to be an easy, accessible, and crisp language to keep the person engaged.
And I think that's what Maitri was referring to.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
take something like what she's doing, which is poetry, which has a certain lyric to it, and
Yes.
brings it down to allusions that everyone else can relate to.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, a lot of these books are retelling the narrative. So there was an orthodoxy of the narrative,
Yeah.
of the way mythology was told to us.
Yes.
But now they're turning it on its head. Is that what's really working?
I will agree. Yes, it is changing. The whole narrative change has made a difference. See, the language earlier was just too serious for these young readers to be interested in. They have had a basic knowledge from their family, and they are happy with that. This is something. This new book that has now come in on board is something that keeps them interested. They know the whole story, but they don't know it in length. And here's a book which will give them more details and will also educate them and still keep them interested in it. They have various other interesting reads like all the vampire series and everything else, which is interesting. But this is something which will also give them a feel of their own Indian mythology, which keeps them interested. They're happy, their parents are interested, they're learning something new.
All right, so we'd like to hear more from you watching this conversation. Do log into our website, indiapostlive.com. You can also tweet with us, #IndiaPostLive. Bring in those comments because we've got interesting guests in our studio today, someone from publishing, authors themselves giving their perspective on why Indian mythology is taking such a great hold of the Indian public consciousness in today's youth. Maitri, coming to you. It's very interesting when you say that you're bringing it down to the level of everyone understanding. You're decoding somewhat of the narrative that we've grown up with. But there's also a retelling of the story. Do you think that works? Turning different narratives on their head, because at some level we were brought up to think in a certain way, and now there's somewhat of a challenge to the orthodoxy.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I'd like to take you a little back. When we talk of experimentation in mythology, it's actually not a new phenomenon. If you go back to Peter Brook's taking away from literature, if you go back to even films, Peter Brooks's Mahabharata, and then you have something like Sita Sings the Blues. Especially when I mentioned Sita Sings the Blues, you have a whole film based on the Ramayana, spoken in a very presented in a very MTV-ish kind of fashion. You actually have Sita swinging, hip swinging and swaying to the jazz music and sprouting stuff like praising Rama, but Rama burns his wife, stuff like that. So even if you see the experimentation, it has been going on for a while. And when you talk about retelling, there has been plenty of retelling forms of. If you look at Jaya by Devdatta Patnaik, if you look at
Absolutely.
Adi Parva by Amruta Patil, these are all retelling. These are very, very well researched books. But they have a perspective. The perspective of the author comes in over here.
Absolutely.
And this is not only the retelling of the epic, these are retelling with lots of fine details brought in about why the stories of the epic unfold and how they unfold, what was the background between them, which makes it very interesting. And there are so many diverse ways that they're being told, which also makes it
very
interesting to the new generation.
All right, Maitri Chaudhary, thank you so much for Skyping in with us from Bangalore. And of course, we'll keep coming back to you for more interesting conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Ratnachi, you were referring to something very interesting, and taking off from the Devdutt Patnaik's, the retelling. Yeah. You were saying that when a book comes to an editor's table, yeah, there is a process of author, editor, and publicist sitting together. Yeah. How important is it? So while there might be author perspectives, is trying to get the author to also see what readers want.
Well, it's an interest of all the three persons sitting together to see that what is coming on the plate is what the readers want, but we still do not take away the originality from the author's, his own ideas. Yeah, a little bit of tweaking if that helps, and both the sides are happy, the readers are happy, and the writer is happy. That's the best deal. But yes, the authors themselves are pretty conscious these days, and in terms of what they are writing will, in the end, they want their hard effort to reach everybody. So there is a conscious change, and the literary fiction will not go away anywhere, the non-fictions will not go anywhere. But yes, there's a conscious change, and people are interested in seeing what the readers are interested in buying.
But at some level, from a purist author's point of view,
yeah,
where comes the sort of balance between what the author is trying to do and what the market wants?
It's a very genuine balance. We will never ever interfere in an author's originality. We will stick to what the original plan is. It is only about tweaking a little bit of language here and there. Say, suppose if there's a heavy phrase somewhere which is interesting in terms of somebody who can understand the language pretty well, but then we know a person who's in his early school days will be interested in reading the book, but then with this language he'll not be interested. We tweak the language a little, but this is only to see that the originality of the work doesn't go, and the author is very much kept in view. The whole process of to and fro between the proofs happens until the time the editor, the publishing, and the author is happy. We do not go ahead with the
and how important is the branding machinery then?
The branding machinery is very, very important, but then it is not about just about an established author coming out with a book anymore. There are a lot of people who've written first time. Amesh and Chetan Bhagat are completely, clearly good examples for that. They started in the first go and they were super hits. And they're authors who've written for many, many years, and they have a standard of writing. And people expect the same from them, and they're happy to accept it. So, and then the whole otherwise the branding work machinery, which is given by the marketing department to any work, is about what the book contains, what the reach of the book will be, how we can make the reach bigger. The whole process is about, if say supposedly it is targeted to 13 to 30, how can we reach to 30 to 40 is what we plan.
So the
as.
push,
Yeah,
beyond
the push,
that.
yeah, and we have to then see and implement what are the other tools which are required to engage that 30 to 40 in it. So the whole marketing process has grown much, much larger in compared to the beginning of the decade last decade. It's a complete change. It's not really a completely editorial bent publishing house anymore. The marketing has an important role to play. They can break and make the book alongside
right.
the
Maitri
writer and the
pointed out
author.
something also very interesting.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not new,
Yeah.
but clearly in a globalized world, it's becoming easier then to make it more accessible to a larger audience.
Yeah, I mean the awareness, the number of online portals, the more and more channels that are promoting books, and now new shows are coming up, book launches are happening, authors are going out talking to people, which didn't used to happen until about a few years back. All this is definitely creating an awareness. Students come to book launches, they're happy to do that. Teachers are willing to bring in students to get to meet the authors. The authors go down to schools, the author go down to colleges. So all this is definitely making that sphere much larger than what it used to be earlier.
And at some level though, at the end of the day, it's really up to the author to write a good book. For it to go beyond that push, that, like you're saying, to the larger audience.
Well, I agree. Maybe the author needs to have the right plot, but it is an equally important job of an editor to make it right. It is a bonding which has to work right for a book.
And when you engage with the Ashok Banker series,
Yeah.
And you read the book,
Yeah.
because they're obviously different tellings of the same story, what were your gut reactions as someone who was given a brief that this has to now be really sold to a wider audience?
See, right from the first moment, I knew this was for the bigger, larger audience. It's not as compared to Devdutt Patnaik's, who are restricted to people who have a higher level of intelligence. So we were right from the first moment very interested in creating a completely new plan for it. The hype was created, press releases were moved out. We ensured Ashok Banker was be at the right places at the right moment. The interviews were done much in advance. So the whole level was sort of created, a platform was created at that moment for the book to come out. The advantage with the Ayodhya series was that he was an international publisher for that matter. Till that time, Indian mentality was still accepting more international authors than Indian authors. The whole interest has changed after Chetan Bhagat, Ashok Banker publishing in Indian publishing now, Amish coming out. There are many more. If you see literary also, Manu Joseph, and there are many more like that who've really created
crossed
that.
over.
Yeah, and Arvind Adiga, first-time author, went on to Booker. An Indian publisher took him over and he went on to Booker. So this whole trend has changed and mentality of Indian reader, and they're more interested in reading Indian stuff than just relying on the international one.
But it's also interesting because when you look at these books,
yeah,
so in the oral tradition that we grew up on,
yeah,
there were these complexities of caste, race, perspectives, so Ravan was bad, Ram was good. There were these dualities that we grew up on.
Yeah.
These authors, like
Yeah.
Asura for instance, is telling it from Ravan's perspective. So it's turning everything on its head. So clearly there is a sense now that in an equitable society, so is it reflection of the kind of society we're in now? Perhaps a little more equitable, a little more democratic, a little more diverse. Because India is that, right? A microcosm.
Yes, I agree. It's not anymore about learning on the right and not knowing anything about the wrong.
Right.
It is also now about knowing the wrong as much as knowing the right. And people are open to taking up newer ideas and newer thoughts in their thought process. So Ravan is not really wrong anymore because they also want to know his perspective. So and for a change with everybody wants a change in life. They do not want to just know the Ram all the time. People want to know the negatives now to also judge better what was right and what was wrong. They need to know know both sides of the coin.
So I think what's interesting is what these books are doing is it's also taking away from the politics and the ideology and giving people, especially the younger population, a little more critical perspective, because our education system,
Yes,
as you and I
yes,
know,
yes,
is
yes.
very orthodoxy. It's very bland and dry.
So we are trying to break free from all that.
And how much is the engagement with schools important when you're sort of selling books like these?
Well, they are the base of the future. So it is extremely important. We try to reach to students as much as possible, and the whole social marketing does that for us. It's not easy to get an author to every school, but we still try to invite schools as much as possible when an author meet is possible. There are a lot of restrictions. Students can't come out by themselves. The time has to suit everything else. But that's social marketing is what is doing all that for us. Students can be available at any point in time when we are doing social marketing for them.
So what do you make of film adaptations? Because now there are reports that someone like Karan Johar is jumping into the fray and wanting to buy the adaptation rights to the Amish Tripathi trilogy. There are people now looking at and making them into films, very much like the Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
Would that work in India?
See, the movies on mythologies have happened. There are tons of them sitting in Indian cinemas. The advantage here is that you already have a base. People have already liked it, and you don't really have to go too much die hard into the original facts about the book. You clearly call it fiction. The book is the movie has been so we've got disclaimers, and the book has been exactly replicated into a movie.
Because
things
there's
are
a very
fine.
fine balance.
We don't have
of
too many Shiv Senas coming after us.
Yes, so, I was just coming to that.
So it is a win-win for everybody.
Sure.
The book has already done its bit. The author is happy. The author sells out the right. He's happy twice, and the producers and directors are sure it will still work. And the masala has to come in. Bollywood has to give it a little
And it's very important,
masala.
you know, the illusion you made to Shiv Sena and the offending and all that, because we've just seen a few publishing houses, including one of your former employers, being taken to task for not standing up on an academic base. So it helps that a lot of this is fictionalized, right? And it's declared right up front that it is.
up front. And the publishers also consult lawyers and advocates when they take on a similar subject. Well, we Indians are extremely sensitive about our mythology. So publishers also ensure, the authors also ensure that they aren't writing anything which will go wrong against them. On the other side, no publicity is bad publicity anymore, but still we always try to ensure that we do not hurt anybody's sentiment. So all these required legalities are done before we get on to accepting a book and publicizing it.
And at another level, when you go out with a book like this, do you, before you actually go with it, do some sort of audience reaction or reader's reaction? Do you do that kind of thing now? Because globally now you have what you call the Goodreads phenomenon, where you go to closed groups and you provide them advanced copies. Is that happening now in India?
That's already started happening, yes.
Okay.
That's happening. It's not being done on a very large scale.
Because I would imagine books like these that could have potential of being differed with, or have certain different perspectives. It would be important to take to your target audience and at least do some sort of focus group.
So publishing world is definitely interested in getting all this done. The only difficulty that we face is that these reading groups or small book clubs, they are so secluded. They've not publicized them at all. These are close bunch of few 10, 15 people who want to just live their life and easy and just sit and read in a corner. So we tend to not get hold of these book reading clubs very easily. It is only when an author knows about it or a publisher gets to know about it and we circulate books outside and see what the reaction is going to be like. So it's done on a very, very personal and a small level. This is something which will definitely be a big thing in future. We definitely are interested in getting that advanced feedback to what we're publishing. So as of now, it is sort of circulated in close friend circle, and we get a feedback out of it.
So the advance that Amish Tripathi got, close to $1 million,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Unheard of, because I mean, in the past, maybe $25,000. Is this becoming now par for the course? Because of the
Yes.
cluttered market and the competition, is it becoming somewhat of what's going to happen now with authors that appear to be engaging?
Yes. See, money definitely attracts many more authors to come in on board. Uh, the only thing to worry about here is that we do not want the intelligent writing to go away because of all this.
Okay.
The the mass markets will remain and they will not go ever again after this. But then a writer shouldn't really write with a mindset that he has to get hold of like many dollars and millions of dollars to
And it's
get
problematic
before.
because we've seen the case of okay, so we're moving away from mythology,
Yeah.
but the case of Vikram Seth, for
Yeah.
instance, where he was supposed to come out with books. So there's a lot of undue pressure then on both the publisher and the author if it becomes too much of a commercial rather than a literary or at least a
Well, yeah,
intelligent game.
yeah. So sometimes, see, these are creative people. They
Right.
can get hold of a bad time, and they do not find the right stuff to give out to their followers. Especially Vikram Seth, he has such a big following. He really doesn't want to give them any sort of a feel of regret. Suitable Boy is a wonder book. Suitable Girl, he
We're
has to
hoping.
ensure has to be equally good.
Equally good.
Yeah, he can't compromise. He has a name, he has a set of followers, he can't disappoint.
And their expectations.
Yeah, and their expectations. They will obviously expect the Suitable Girl to be much better than Suitable
Suitable
Boy.
Boy.
Now, Suitable Boy has been sitting and being published year by year by over, I think it's about more than a decade old, about 15 years old. They definitely expect the same to come in again. So we definitely, I mean, I would say it is not right to get into that commerciality because you can't force a creative person to, just write for the heck of writing.
So
The
from a
name
publishing-
the
yeah,
stance has to
absolutely,
be there.
yeah. So from a publishing perspective, you did say that a lot of Indian publishers are now going global, going to the Booker, going to these global awards.
Yeah.
At some level, is it also because there is now a global interest in the Indian mythology story because India has become somewhat of a focal point for global leaders because it's the economy that's growing. So therefore, there's some sort of linkage, both, like we said earlier, to society being a little more accepting, but also now globally, India becoming a focal point.
Yes, India is definitely becoming a focal point. The overall, the idea is that Indian publishing will definitely be at par in coming years to any other international publisher. So the writing is definitely very niche. It is now getting the right platform, and it is now getting an international platform alongside. Indian authors published by Indian authors are being contracted for international publishing alongside. So publishers and authors separately also sell outright to these really well-written books to other publishers outside. So India is definitely at the right place, at the right point right now in terms of literary publishing. Mass market is definitely going alongside. So you won't believe. I think on an average we definitely get about 5 to 6 international awards for Indian writers every year.
Interesting.
Which is growing by the day. Booker is so easy now for Indian writers.
And now there's the Asian Booker and then there's a global Booker. And I think the advantage is, at the end of the day, the Indian cultural tradition is that of storytelling. And we have a rich heritage of storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is only about getting that global acceptance, which is now happening. We have it's the same as in films. We were really not too sure about
we just
Oscar
had volume.
till about
we had volume, but we didn't have that quality.
Yeah, so it is definitely growing. The people are more open-hearted to seeing what India is publishing, and it's going to really change in coming years.
And I think what's really interesting is that apart from the fact that India has had rich tradition of storytelling, we've never really been good at selling our stories. And that's what's being the difference between before 2000 and what's happening now.
Yes, the whole thing about changing, and well, that's what the marketing change is all about. Publishing earlier was a easy marketing. We just used to just do collaterals, get the author some about 8-10 main interviews. It's not that anymore. You need all that, and you need all the separate hype that you create. Like, which Indian author? They're just handful would go ensure that there's an embargo and you only release at a particular
Absolutely.
time. That would never happen.
And social media has
it used
been a
to
game
happen for
changer.
Harry Potter.
Yes.
And now Indians are doing that.
it.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
All that intrigue and the
Yeah.
build up. And interesting, we just finally got some tweets. So someone tweeted to us, Roy Jano, saying, Shiva is not a god anymore. He is a brand.
He's a brand. Yes, absolutely.
And it's the brand that seems to be selling.
It's a brand that seems to be selling. That's true. Amish and Chetan, these guys are not really authors anymore. They are brands by themselves. Well, for that matter, Shovardi and Vikram Seth are also brands.
But the mythology
then
phenomenon is a new one that Sunny stepped in. So they're branding Shiva, they're branding the Ramayana, they're branding Mahabharata.
So for that matter, Devdak Patnaik will never go away.
Right.
His writing will always remain.
This is a more cultural perspective.
But if you see, he's also changing and making it more for the Indian readers and now than just for the intellect level which he used to be. He's writing for children separately. That's an easier writing. He himself is involved with the current Mahabharata serial that is coming in. So the whole, they are definitely brands now. They're not just writers and writing for their literary readers.
And how important is the social media play? Because I know a lot of bloggers who've been writing, and they find that when they write about issues of mythology and the retelling, they see a spike in traffic. Do you also, from a publishing perspective, keep a close eye on those sort of analytics at the back end?
Yes. That's done. Sometimes the campaigns are created in a way that we get that spike in. As I said, no publicity is bad publicity anymore. It is only about engaging people and spreading the awareness. So the campaigns are created in a way that the interest gets involved. And everyone in India has something to say about mythology.
Absolutely.
You will always have,
Absolutely.
maybe people will not, there are people will say who would just condemn.
The purists.
So, but like I belong to a non-religious family.
Sure.
I myself have a very little knowledge about it, but I will still have a say in it because from my surroundings, I still have grabbed a lot to say about it. So this is one subject which every Indian will talk about.
In fact, cutting across religious lines, a lot of people are reading mythology because it's somewhat of an interesting narrative, taking away from the divisive narratives that sometimes existed in the past. I think I think what these books are doing, the Amish books, Ashok Back is doing, they're somewhat playing a leveler as well.
Yes, they are playing the levelers, and they are. I mean, they are demand of the current time. That's what they are. That's why they really got picked up. I mean, everybody knows Ashok Bankar and Amish Tripathi now. So it was just bang on the time because the young readers is what they targeted, and that's what they got.
And the young reader is important, but like you said at the opening of the show, that you are also now trying to push the envelope to go to the older readers who've perhaps been given a large dose of the story the way the purists would have told it.
Yeah. See, the thing is, we all of us are with a very busy schedule, stressed life. Now these light readings give you a little bit of relaxed a moment. You don't have to spend too long in reading them. They're quick readers.
Break your head over it.
Yeah, and you don't have to really worry about them.
No.
You don't have to, like, you don't feel like missing anything anymore. You just know you just need to finish your novel in 3 hours. And these are all bedtimers now. You always, sorry, do you have a...
Yeah, so we've actually got someone online joining us live. A blogger, Delhi Ka Diva, Ritika Kochar joins us from Delhi. And Ritika is actually, that's what I was referring to. Ritika, you said in the past, you talked about your blog where you said whenever you wrote about religion and stories around mythology, there was a spike in traffic.
Absolutely, and especially if I write about mythology. Art, very important, but the way I write, the moment I write about mythology, suddenly there's a huge spike, and that's outside India. It's not so much in India, it's outside India. That's kind of interesting.
Really, that's interesting.
Right,
That's
and when you say outside India, do your analytics tell you, where you get this traffic from?
Most of it seems to be coming out of America, but
Okay.
there are places as strange as I don't know, the middle of China reading it, Poland,
Oh, that's interesting.
or Mauritius, across the world. Not as much as America. America seems to be the biggest readership. So I think there are a lot of people in India who are trying to connect to the stories of their past. But
Oh, we've got a-
Okay, we seem to be having a problem
it's
there.
across the world. So
Right.
either there are a lot of Indians out there trying to connect in, or sorry, can you not hear me? Can I keep this
We
close
can't
in
see you,
second?
Ritika, so we'll come back to you in a bit. But I'm going to get
Hello?
Ratna in on that because I think it's interesting that there is a global audience that
Yeah.
is wanting to access these stories. So therefore, it's helping publishers like you.
Yeah, definitely. I actually wanted to understand from her is that the whether these people engaging from other countries are these Indians, or do we have more foreign nationals coming in into that? But then yes, I'm sure it's also about connecting with your home back when you're
Yes,
away.
that's what she was
So,
alluding
yeah.
to. But I think also what Ritika was had a different perspective also on the kind of writing now. I think you were also alluding to that. I think the writing is less about breaking a head over it
Yeah,
and more being
yeah.
engaged with the interesting, colorful side stories
Yeah,
that exist.
yeah.
So because most of the mythologies we grew up with had that one narrative, but the side stories, Sita's perspective, Ravan's perspective, someone
Yeah,
else's perspective, the
So
other stories.
We've so far have been only thinking and
The
reading
mainstream.
about the heroes.
Yes.
But yes, now we
The
know about this.
anti-hero.
Yeah, know about the anti-hero. We've got the side heroes. So yes, we've been only been restricted to knowing one character, one main character. Although it is very interesting to see how the other characters involving in that epic are as important.
As important.
So it is always very interesting when you are not just writing about Ram, but Ravan alongside. He has had a very, very interesting life, and we never bothered about knowing it. Only when somebody thinks of writing and that you get to know about it. So, yeah, do we go back to her?
No, so just one. So just the last word from
Yeah.
you. Going back to the original question we were
Yeah.
asking when we started the
Yeah.
conversation, why is Indian mythology becoming such a part of pulp fiction? How would you sum it up or crystallize it?
Well, I would say it's there in our blood. We will never leave it. But yes, with the new reading trend coming in, see, romance will remain romance. How much more can you bring into it? Thriller will remain thriller. How much more can you bring? But mythology is so vast. Our Indian mythology is so vast that every time you will still be able to give something new to readers. So with the newer generations coming in, the reading being more for the newer generations, easy, light, lively, easier to understand, mythology will never go. It will always remain. It will be a very important part of our life.
Our
and
DNA.
it is our DNA, absolutely our DNA. I mean, the best part is no father will ever stop you from reading
Absolutely. So, Ritika, we're running out of time, but I think it's very important from an author's perspective to get your sense of why mythology is becoming pretty much the largest seller out of India.
Shivraj, when you sent me your topic, I was thinking about it, and I realized that mythology has always been the pulp fiction way of selling the story. It's about selling a story.
Yeah.
But in India, it's mythology which is reaching out to the masses. And even in my growing up days, it was always the Amar Chitra Kathas and the graphic novels, etc., which sold it, or it was a bedtime story that my parents told me growing up. So it's not about the Bhagavad Gita or the Vishnu Puran, which maybe a grown-up would read and a child wouldn't be able to read. But we've grown up with these stories being a part of our DNA. You know, the Amar Chitra Kathas, what we only went mythology. So this is the way Indians connect to their religion in a large way. You know, with 3 million gods, how else do you find out what's going on unless it's through these stories and
Absolutely.
Knowing, our Superman was always Hanuman, the man who could fly and leap over tall buildings
Yeah.
and cross the sea in one leap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. We've always had Pulp Fiction. We've always had mythology as our version of Pulp Fiction. So that isn't changing. It's just the style of putting it out is now changing a bit.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ritika, and thank you so much, Ratna,
you so much.
for that very interesting perspective.
was a pleasure.
Continue joining in on the conversation. Log on to our website, indiapostlive.com. Keep those comments coming in. We'll take cognizance of them. Also, continue to tweet with us, #IndiaPostLive. Thank you for watching.